Hi, and welcome back to Happy Tankers. Like a lot of you guys out there, you probably got a model that you started on a while back and put it off to the side for one reason or another, and that's what I got here today. The Tamiya Tiger 1 Late. So we're going to take a look at it and see why I stopped. Still got the instructions and stuff. Looks like I have the hull most of the way built. I've added an engine, resin engine, and it looks like I have the radiators and gas tanks in there also. Not that you can see them under the engine decks or the screens. I think I put this away because this was my first attempt at making my own Zimmerit, and I wasn't all that terribly pleased with it, so I just kind of put it on hold while I decided what to do with it. Well, now seems as good a time as any to go ahead, dig it out, and finish it. Looks like I put it on the mantlet too. I don't know, it looks okay. I've used some photo etch before and some other resin Zimmerit that looked better. I just needed something to try it on. But you never really know how things are going to look till you're actually done with it. Maybe I stopped because of all the individual track pieces. I've never liked these all that much. I mean, you can make them look good. This one shouldn't be too hard to finish up. You know what? I think it's time to finally finish it. God only knows how many years I've had this. Let's get to work. The first thing I do is go through the instructions and see what I've done and where I'm at. I tend to check off the steps completed in the instruction sheet so it makes it a little bit easier. And it helps me reacquaint myself with the kit, the plans I had for it, and where I wanted to go with it. I also looked up pictures on the internet of the tank and was lucky enough to find a fair number of them, which I included throughout the video. It shows Tiger 312 of the 505th Panzer Abbott in various places with different gear, different stowage, and camo. This is nice because it gives you more freedom with the paint, damage, fenders, and just opens up more creative opportunities for your kit. Time to buckle down and work on what made me stop, the tracks. I don't know why I was such a baby about it. As far as glue together tracks, these are pretty easy. Maybe it was because I had quite a few early failures when they first started coming out. And in 1/72nd scale, they were a real turnoff. Then my first attempt in 1/35th scale was a AMT Ertl kit, which really wasn't any better. It can be tedious or it can be relaxing, depending on your perspective, and if there's a pandemic lockdown going on. Doing all these repetitive steps of cutting and sanding and gluing all these small sections. Sometimes it's just both. The slower drying Tamiya extra thin glue helps, but I just can't stand the smell. I ended up making my own glue concoction to try to eliminate a lot of the smell. At some point I'm going to have to make a few batches of it and really do some trial and error testing. I guess it's that you feel like you've done a lot of work, but you can't see any real progress until you start getting the longer sections together. One of my earlier mistakes was with glue together tracks is following the instructions. In most cases, they have you glue the drive wheel on early. In many cases, this does not leave enough room to get the track links where they need to go. Everything is based on the teeth of the drive sprocket, so leaving it off usually makes it easier to get the tracks on and off for trial fitting, and it certainly makes it easier to get the spacing correct and any sag that may be needed. Assemble the tracks as either a few sections, or at least leave one end not connected so you can glue the final assembly together while it's on the tank. Time to finish the base color with some Tamiya dark yellow. I'm not going to worry about covering the little bits of green on it. I had painted a little camo on this before packing away, just to get an idea of what the Zimmerit would look like with some color on it besides the yellow. It can look like camo that was put on at an earlier time or earlier campaign, left over from refitting, or just whatever. I start the camo with an olive green and small, thin, random stripes. I've reduced the paint about 30% with 70% rubbing alcohol instead of my usual 90%. You just can't find the 90% during this pandemic. I wanted something similar to the box art with the green and the brown. If I had been smarter, I would have used some colored pencils on one of the instruction sheets and made a guide. Sometimes it's easier if you have something that you can glance at so that you can get the camouflage how you want it. I prefer to use a double action airbrush for camouflage patterns so that I can get a finer spray pattern and adjust the paint flow as I'm spraying. For me, it's far easier that way than to constantly be changing a single action airbrush. And I prefer the airbrushes with a pistol grip, similar to the full-size spray guns for painting cars, but I still haven't found where I packed those. I had a senior moment and couldn't remember if I usually used the Hall Red or the Red Brown for the German camouflage. So I went eeny meeny miny mo and grabbed the Hall Red. As long as it's something close to the old red oxide primer, you should be close enough. And if I recall correctly, the red oxide primer was used as the primer for the panzers and as camouflage paint when supplies ran low. Plus the colors are so close that after weathering, I doubt anyone would be able to tell the difference. You may notice that I went a little heavy on the trigger with one of the stripes and it looked more like a big blob. Afterwards, I sprayed a little more dark yellow on it, and just to make it more to my liking. I was really pleased with how this pattern turned out. I think I got the right mix that I was looking for between the brown and the green, and probably for the first time, it looked as good as what I had pictured in my head. Yay me! For the chipping effects, I used a combination of paint dabbed on with a scuff pad or a sponge for some places, and artist's colored pencils for other places. These aren't the usual colored pencils that your kids use from Crayola, but the ones that you find in art stores. I believe they're some kind of oil-based or pastel-based, and usually softer than regular colored pencils. They're great for making small chips or for making some thin rust streaks. For bigger streaks I use the oil paints, but for small ones the artist pencils are pretty easy and fast with zero dry time and no smelly odors. The worst thing about them is that you'll have to find a place on your already crowded workbench to put them. Grab a couple colors and give them a try. I bet you'll be asking yourself why you hadn't tried them before. I put a light coat of Tamiya buff all over the tank, and I go a little bit heavier on the fender skirts and the rear. And then I put a final coat of Tester's dull coat to lock down the washes, the pastels, the rest of the weathering, and the decals. And here is Tiger 312. I'd used epoxy putty on the Zimmerit with lion roar tools for the patterning of it. I think it may have turned out a little bit thick in a few places, but overall I'm very pleased with it. Sometimes we get scared to try a new technique because we never know how it's going to turn out till we're done. So I'm glad I finally finished this model. And as you can see, the Tamiya decals laid down nicely over the Zimmerit after an application or two of the microsol solution. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it inspired you to dust off an old unfinished kit or maybe try a new technique. I'd also like to thank those who had posted all the old war pictures that I found and included on this video. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed it, hit that like and subscribe button. See y'all next time on Pappy Tinkers.